Hello and welcome to Booktopia TV. I'm Sarah McDouling and I am thrilled to announce one of the foremost American crime novelists, best-selling author of the Temperance Brennan series, Kathy Reichs.
Hello.
Kathy, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me today.
Now, I've got a copy of your new book here, The Bone Code. Would you be able, for the people watching, just to outline a little bit about what they can expect in this new book?
Bone Code. The idea for this book came to me. I get my ideas in a number of ways. One would be a case I've worked on, or something, some experience I've had, or something that a colleague has told me about. Others come from what I think of what we used to call in the writer's room for Bones, ripped from the headlines. So this story kind of ripped from the headlines. The idea was triggered when I read a story. We now have the entire human genome mapped, and we have tools now for modifying the human genome, which is a very powerful and somewhat scary, hopeful, but also scary thing. So the community, a genetics community, has pretty much agreed not to do that. We're not going to create designer babies. Well, I read a story about a Chinese doctor who went ahead and did that. He modified the genomes of 2 unborn baby girls. And I thought, and this is what process I always go through. I say, well, what if? What if this? What if that? And I started saying, well, what if someone did that? Some person unethically and for dishonorable reasons used these tools to modify the human genome. So that's kind of a theme through the book, and the power of genetics, the power of DNA. The story starts out with Tempe, our heroine, enduring a hurricane here in the Carolinas. I'm speaking to you from Charlotte, North Carolina. And a hurricane slams in. She's fine. But the next morning, she gets a call from her best friend, Anne, who is not so fine. She's down on one of the barrier islands near Charleston, South Carolina, and she's had some damage. So she's panicky. She says, Tempe, you've got to come down here and help me. So Tempe drives down to Charleston. And just as she's pulling into the city, she gets a call from the coroner. A medical waste container has washed ashore in the hurricane, and there are 2 bodies in it. And she'd like Tempe's help with determining who these bodies are and what happened to them. So Tempe agrees reluctantly. And as she's doing the autopsies, she notices some disturbingly similar details compared to a case she worked on in Quebec 15 years earlier. So that leads us into our main storyline.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is the 20th Temperance Brennan book in the series. Is that right?
It is 20. I can't.
Number 20?
Yes, number 20. Yeah. So, yeah.
How does it feel to have written 20 books about Tempe?
It feels impossible. You know, back when I wrote the first book, which came to be Deja Dead, all I hoped for was that some publisher would like it and it would be published, and then readers would buy it, and hopefully like the story. Little did I know it would lead to 20 more books and a television series, and all that has come out of that first initial insecure effort.
Now, you've already mentioned a little bit the inspiration taken from the headlines that went into this book. But as with all of your books, there's a lot going on in the Bone Code. You've got your sort of central plot, but you've also got some kind of subplots going on, which are really very fascinating. And I wondered, did you draw any real life inspiration for the murders and also for the fascinating kind of C plot that you have going about the death masks?
Oh, the death masks. Well, some of it based on personal experience, the hurricane. I do own a home on one of the barrier islands off of in the Atlantic Ocean off of Charleston. So every time we get a hurricane alert, of course, it's very nervous, and you have to batten down the hatches. And so that definitely, we've never been hit so far. Well, we were back in 1989 very badly by Hurricane Hugo, but not since. So that experience I certainly took from my own life history. The cases, not so much. I have had cases of bodies that have washed ashore in barrels, not necessarily medical waste containers. So I have worked on those. So I know what that's like. I know what they look like. I know what it feels like to be, trying to work on a decomposed body and get information, in my case, tease information primarily from the bones. So that's based on a number of cases. It's an amalgam of cases that I've worked on. What else? You just mentioned something else, I think. No?
Oh, the death masks.
Oh, the death masks. Again, it was just, I read a story about this one particular death mask. I don't want to give away any spoilers, but about this one particular death mask in Paris. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. The whole concept of these death masks, and then this one death mask in particular. So I decided to weave that in as in the writer's room, we would talk about an A story and a B story and a C story. You'd have your main, which is the crime, and then a B story, which would be something going on in the lives of your characters. And then your C story might be another, just a subplot. And that's my death mask line.
Well, speaking of the writer's room, many people, myself included, came to your books via Bones, the popular long-running TV series inspired by your character. Yeah. And yet, being a fan of both the books and the TV show, book Temperance Brennan and the TV Temperance Brennan are actually, very different. So I guess my question is, what was it like to be involved in the TV show in an adaptation which kind of really changed and reimagined your character like that?
It changed many things about her. She's certainly, in TV, Tempe is younger. She's taller. She's certainly quirkier, less polished. She's not at all socially sophisticated, although she evolves over the course of 12 seasons. We were on air 12 seasons, which makes us still the longest running scripted drama in the history of the Fox network. So we're pretty proud of that. We did 246 episodes. So yeah, she is a bit different. She works in Washington, D.C. at the at the Jeffersonian. It's funny, that's a Freudian slip, because it was coming down to shoot the pilot, and we had to put the logos on the uniforms, and we had to put the logo on the crime scene recovery truck. And we had been in contact with the Smithsonian lawyers. Could we call it the Smithsonian? And they didn't say no, but they never said yes. So we just said, forget it. We'll just go with the Jeffersonian. So she's at the Jeffersonian. So whereas in the books, Tempe is a bit older. I'm vague on her age. And she doesn't age much throughout the series. She also works in the Carolinas, and she commutes between the Carolinas and Montreal in Canada. I remember when I did an interview, or a critic, it was a review, a reviewer said, Carolina and Canada, that's ridiculous. No one would do that. Well, that's what I was doing at the time that I wrote the books. So she is different in many ways. I reconcile. Initially, there was some, grumbling about, well, why is she different? Why isn't she the same as the books? But I like the idea that TV Tempe is not identical. And I would tell people, just think of her as a prequel. She's a younger, less sophisticated version of the Tempe that you read about in the books. And when I go to write a book, I don't have to worry about TV Tempe. She's, off doing her thing, and I can just write the book Tempe.
You do, however, have to worry about 19 books worth of continuity. Is that hard to keep track of?
It is, and I often have to go back. Today I'm writing number 21. So I have to go back or have my assistant go back, and I'm writing about Slidell, and they get into his car, and I thought, okay, he has was it a 4Runner? What kind of car does he write? Yeah. And you do have to be consistent, because thriller readers are very smart. And if you get it wrong, they'll let they'll let you know. You also have to be consistent, you know, over a long term about more important things like are Ryan's eyes blue or are they green? You get that wrong, you're going to hear about it. Or, you know, is her mother alive or did her mother die 10 years ago? So yes, I'm constantly checking back to the history to make sure that I keep it accurate. The other challenge with a continuing character is age, as I mentioned. Do you age your character in real time? Or do you use literary license and not do that? And I have chosen to not do that. When we started, Tempe is clearly north of 40, but I don't really go into how old she is. Well, in these later books, she's still clearly north of 40, but the cat's about 50 years old at this point. But
30.
Yeah, I don't really. My cat, by the way, is sitting right here. I don't know if you can see him. He keeps an eye on.
My goodness.
Right? Yeah, he's here. He always accompanies me when I do Zooms or interviews. So that's Skinny. Anyway, yeah. So that's another thing you have to be consistent about is age, or at least make a decision how you're going to do it, and then be consistent on aging your characters.
Oh, real life inspiration for Betty.
Yes, he is. He is. Bertie is no longer with us. Bertie died at the age of 19, I think he was.
So how do you approach maintaining, you know, such success over such a long running series? You know, is it hard to keep things fresh?
Keep them fresh. Yeah. And that's a good point. You not only have to keep them straight, as we talked about, but you have to keep them fresh. You have to do something new you have to keep your characters evolving and changing, their relationships evolving and changing. And you have to keep your stories new and fresh. You can't just have, and the science. I write murder mysteries, but the solutions are driven by science. So you can't just use bones after bones after bones in every book. People would get bored. So you constantly have to use, you know, something else. The mitochondrial DNA as extracted from cat hair, for example, or blood spatter pattern analysis, or, you know, every time it's forensic linguistics I've used. Every time it's a different specialty. You've also got to have a different storyline. You can't do serial killer after serial killer after serial killer. So I've had storylines that dealt with cults. I've had storylines that dealt with outlaw biker gangs. I've had storylines. If I have an experience, it's probably going to end up in a book. I was honored to be invited to go with 4 other authors on a USO, a United Service Organization, tour to Afghanistan, Kyrgyzstan and Afghanistan, to thank the troops for their service. And it was a very moving experience because we were supposed to be thanking them, and they spent their whole time thanking us for coming. So the next book I wrote, guess where Temperance Brennan went? She went to Afghanistan. Yeah, so I think like any author, I guess, you just keep drawing on experiences. As I said, I get my ideas either from the headlines or from an actual case that I've worked on, or from a case that a colleague has told me about, something I've read in a forensic journal, something I've heard about at a forensic meeting, our annual meetings I attend every year. Well, every year except this year. But yeah, so you got to keep it changing and moving.
One of the things I really love about your books, and this is true of the TV show as well, is that there's a lot of humor. I particularly am really enjoying in this book all of the like witty banter, loving witty banter between Tempe and Andrew Ryan, and I wondered how hard it is to balance the humor with the subject matter.
Yeah, that was one of the things that appealed to me about the 2 gentlemen that became our executive producers on Bones, is that we were on the same page about a lot of things. And one of those was that we wanted to put humor into the show. And that's hard because every episode, every book, you're dealing with violent death. So how do you introduce humor and not be offensive? So it does take a delicate touch. it is a constant balancing act, not to be flipped, not to be disrespectful, but to introduce some humor. So the banter, loving banter, as you call it, between Tempe and Ryan, and the not so loving banter between Tempe and Skinny Slidell, for example. Yeah, that's where I can have some fun with it.
And you have, as part of the plot of the Bone Code, there's a outbreak of disease. Did you come across that idea and start working on that idea before the pandemic, or were you kind of inspired by what you were seeing going on in the world as you were writing?
Yeah, no, the pandemic was way in the future when I started this book. It wasn't on anyone's mind. Again, this was a story I read about a man who suffered from capnocytophagia, and it's pretty gruesome stuff. So I thought, well, that would be an interesting element to introduce into the book.
I was going to ask you how to pronounce that, actually. Could you do it again?
Say it, capnocytophagia, but
capnocytophagia. Yeah, that's one of those books when you're reading
that. Anyone say it, so I'm guessing that's how it is.
So in 2020, we saw a really big uptake in people reading fiction, and this was especially true of crime fiction. And I just wondered on your thoughts, why do you think the crime genre resonates with people so deeply, and in particular people who are looking for an escape?
Well, I think it takes them into a world that they don't otherwise have to enter. Hopefully, they don't otherwise have to enter. Crime scenes and morgues and, autopsies, that kind of thing. But they're very curious about it. I think murder mysteries have been around forever. People have been reading them since, the ancient Chinese were writing them thousands of years ago. So it's the fun of the puzzle, I think. You're not just reading a story, but you're reading a story that you're trying to unravel the answers, following the clues and unravel the puzzle. As a thriller writer, I think your job is to give that trail of clues. And it's fair to give red herring clues that lead you off that trail, as long as you explain them and as long as they make sense. That's fair, and it's the reader's job and the detective's job, or the anthropologist, to pick through all of that. I like to throw in twists that the reader isn't expecting, particularly at the end of the book. And I think thriller readers, as they try to figure it out, when I read a thriller, let me put it this way, if I figure it out before the end of the book, I'm disappointed in the author, because I want to be surprised. I want that twist such that I go, oh, I didn't see that coming. So those are kind of my goals when I construct the story. Put in some good science, because people want to learn something, but you've got to keep it brief. You got to keep it accurate. And you have to keep it jargon-free. You can't use all this specialized terminology that we use as experts. So put it in, use it to drive the story. The reader learns something in doing that, and also has the fun of trying to unravel the mystery.
Yeah, I noticed in the book, I really like how often you will have Tempe with a character who doesn't know the jargon, and it allows you to have a bit of back and forth. Like in this novel, it was in a few of the exchanges with Tonya, where, she's just asking Tempe to get to the point and drop the jargon. And so it allows a use of the scientific terms to make the reader feel like they're in the hands of an expert, but then you get the explanation as well as the reader, so that it's really clear. Is that all? I mean, is that, I guess, of course it's intentional, I guess, but is it hard to kind of keep finding ways for her to have conversations that allow a bit of explanation of technical terms?
Yeah, not only that, but introducing your characters, because in a continuing character series, one person this may be the 20th book they're reading. They know Temperance Brennan, they know Andrew Ryan, they know Skinny Slidell. For another reader, it may be the first book they're picking up. So you do have to reintroduce your main premise. This is a forensic anthropologist. She digs up bones, and your main characters. But you don't want to bore your returning reader. So finding new and creative ways to do that is challenging. I've had her sitting in a faculty meeting and she's bored. So she starts writing her autobiography. Hi, my name is Temperance Brennan. I've had her on the witness stand where she's being cross-examined by counsel, and he's asking her questions and bringing out what she does. So you got to keep coming up. You just can't do straight narrative, I feel, or it would be boring. So it's the same with explaining the science as it is with introducing and reintroducing these characters.
I wanted to ask a few questions just about your writing process. Because your books are so intricately plotted, do you fully plan everything out before you start writing, or do you ever kind of start without a clear ending in mind and like write to get there?
You're asking me, am I a pantser or a plotter? Plotters do all the outlining and pantsers go by the seat of their pants. I do a little of both. I'm a hybrid, I guess. My son, who's also a writer, puts up a big bulletin board and he has color-coded cards and he has everything outlined, much as you would when you're breaking a story for an episode, writing an episode for television. I don't do that. I think about it a lot before I actually start hitting the keyboard. Then I do an outline, but it's a very brief outline. I'll outline maybe the first, 10 chapters, and it's maybe a paragraph for each chapter. I know where it's going. I know where the setting is. I know who my main characters will be. I know who my new characters will be. And then I just start writing.
Have you ever pantsed your way through a book and then not known, like had to backtrack and redo things because you realized like the direction you're going in was not working?
Not on a major level. I will sometimes go back. Even today, I'm introducing this new character in book 21, and I'm only, well, don't tell my publisher, but I'm only a few chapters in. And already I thought today, no, I got to go back and change that. She can't have that air about her. She has to have this air about her. So yeah, I will often go back and modify something that I think will work better.
Kathy, you've achieved phenomenal success in multiple fields. Your first book, Deja Dead, was published in the late 90s, at which point you were already a forensic anthropologist. So I just wondered, over the decades since then, if you can take your mind back to before writing your first book, what led you to the decision to write, and what has the journey been like since then, balancing such different careers?
Yeah, well, that's no longer a problem because I'm pretty much focusing on writing now. I'm not doing casework. I'm available, but really not doing much casework. And I'm no longer actively teaching. I think just this week I officially retired from the university. So
congratulations.
Thanks. I didn't even notice it. I had to ask my assistant, did I fill out that paperwork or not? Anyway, I decided to write fiction because, several things came together. I was promoted to full professor, which is the highest rank you can attain at university. So I was free to do whatever I wanted to do. And I didn't feel like doing another research article or journal article or textbook. I also had just finished working on a serial murder case, which had some very interesting elements. So I had a story idea, and it was completely resolved. I'd testified, the court was over, the gentleman was convicted of 3 counts of homicide. So I had a story idea, and I had the freedom to try something new. So I decided I would give it a shot and see if I had a colleague who was writing Western romances, and so I read one and I thought, yeah, I could probably do this. So I told myself I would write it, I would finish it. I would submit it to 50 different places, and I had kind of a figure that I would not accept less than this amount. So I finished it. It took me 2 years because I was writing it without telling anyone about it. I wrote I'm teaching full time and commuting doing the casework. So I finished it in 2 years, and my daughter and I talked about it, and she said, well, she had a friend who had a friend who had a friend who was at a publishing house. Let's send it to Mary Sue. And I thought, well, okay, find out what Mary Sue does. It turns out she was a junior editor at Scribner. So we just composed a letter, and I mailed it off to Mary Sue. And poor Mary Sue was on the other end, having been told that her friend's mother's first novel is coming her way. So, yeah, oh, goody. So she told me later that she took 3 or 4 chapters home with her. It was a Friday. She took them home to read on the weekend, undoubtedly composing her reject letter. She read them. She got in her car. She went back into Manhattan. She got the rest of it, took it home, read it, handed it up the line. And I think within 2 weeks, I had an offer from Scribner. Wow. So that was the only publishing house to which I submitted the manuscript. That was way off your question, right?
No, but I loved hearing that story. What do you think your Kathy of then, former you, pre-publication would say to know that in 2021 you'd be releasing the 20th?
I would say, no, get out. Close the back door, as we say in the South.
Wow. So over the course of the series, looking back, is there any particular book in the Temperance Brennan series that holds a special place for you?
Well, Deja, of course, because it was the first one, and it showed me that I could write well enough to get published. Of course, after that, and it was so successful, it went on to the New York Times, the London Times. Then there's the pressure, well, am I a one-book wonder, or can I do it again? Self-imposed, and also from others. Can she do it again, or is this a one-off? So those first couple, of course, will always have a place in my heart. Maybe my favorite book is the one, Bones to Ashes. It's number 10, I think. I really enjoyed researching that. I spent a lot of time with the Acadian people in French-speaking people, but in Eastern Canada, in the Maritime provinces. I spent a lot of time with them, and they're just awesome with the lobster and the music and the singing, and just they're such a warm, happy people. Anyway, so I really enjoyed researching that book, and I really enjoyed the way that book came out as well.
Do you get much time for reading yourself? And if so, what do you like to read?
I do try to make time for myself to read. I read all over the map. I do read thrillers. I like the darker, grittier stuff, but I don't exclusively read thrillers. What am I reading now? Well, I'm reading The Force by Don Winslow. And that's
wow.
I just read The Nickel Boys by Colin Whitehead. I read A Woman of No Importance. I read, what did I read before that? Anxious People, which was really good. So whatever's good, I'll read. I get annoyed. I kind of, as a kid, I was always taught you have to finish the book. And I've gotten over that. If I don't like a book, I put it down and I pick up a different one.
Okay. Now, you tantalizingly mentioned earlier that you were working on book 21. Is there anything at this early stage that you're able to tell us about that one, or is it all under wraps?
Oh, it's really early. Let me think. It's funny because I've been doing some interviews for Conspiracy of Bones, some for the Bone Code, and then my mind is largely in the new book. What can I tell you about it? It's in the very early stages. At this point, it's titled Book 21. That's about it. It's going to revisit some of Tempe's past. A lot of Tempe's past is going to come back in this one. Let's just leave it at that.
That's an exciting teaser. I think everyone's going to look forward to that one. But in the meantime, they have the Bone Code to read. Oh gosh, I'm so stressed from losing internet. I completely just lost the thread of what I was saying. But we're nearly out of time, so I'll wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining us today and giving us your time. It's been such a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me. I miss everybody down there. Hope to see everybody soon once we can all travel again.
We would love you to come and visit us at Booktopia. That would be amazing.
That would be good. That would be good.
So for everyone watching, you can order your copy of The Bone Code by Kathy Reichs, as well as all of Kathy Reichs' amazing backlist titles at your local bookstore or online at Booktopia. Thanks for watching.